Hey guys, Veronica here. I am back and I am back in Texas. As you can see, we can get into that in detail on Instagram or someplace. But for now, we're going to talk garlic because garlic needs to be in the ground. If you don't already have it planted, maybe this will help you out. But I don't have it planted yet. I've been back in Texas for a week or two now. And so looking to get that in the ground as quickly as possible, basically. So all of this here is kind of set up, ready to go. I've been peeling garlic cloves all morning, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I look for when it comes to garlic that we're going to plant and save as seed, because I see a lot of issues popping up with the garlic that friends are saving, and even sometimes what you get from catalogs. So all of that is to say is that we're just going to walk through some of the things that you want to watch out for, because prevention is a lot easier than trying to fix an issue later. Also, as we begin to talk more and more about seeds and the types of seeds we're saving and what we're looking for, I want to cover some of those bases too. So, as you can see, I have some garlic that is already soaking in a liquid, and this is not water. This is actually our bottom shelf plastic container vodka. That's basically going on because this garlic had some mite damage. Now, what are garlic mites? Garlic mites are something that, while they will not totally destroy your crop, they will make it very ugly. They will compromise the quality of it as far as storage goes, and they're really hard to get rid of once they're already in your soil. So the number one thing that I look for when I'm working with garlic seed and looking at it as potential seed stock is to see if there's mite damage. Now, mite damage basically looks like, and I have a lot of examples here because I have been sifting through all of this, but mite damage looks like, if you've ever seen these sorts of brown spots, a lot of times these brown spots are mite damage. Now, the mites will lay their eggs on the garlic inside of the papery husks, around the root plate, especially the basal plates, sometimes even in like the growing tip area if the paper on the husk wasn't very tight. And they'll just get in there and then they keep continuing in that soil. And they're really, really hard to eradicate. So the best way to prevent adding mites to your soil, garlic mites specifically, is not only by growing your garlic and onions not in the same spot, but also by checking your seed stock before you ever plant it. Now, all of this garlic that I've decided is not going to be planted because of mite damage is not going to go to waste. There's actually a tincture that I'm working on for just gardening stuff in general. And so we'll actually use this garlic to make that tincture, as well as maybe, dry some for garlic powder and other seasoning, but it's not going in the ground, because if I can prevent mites going in the ground, then I will absolutely do that. Now, the stuff that's in the vodka is in there because the mite damage was not to a point where I was super concerned. It didn't look like they had really gotten to these cloves, but again, we want to prevent adding mites to the garden instead of trying to get rid of them later. So I'll soak them in vodka for about 15-20 minutes just to kill off any sorts of eggs and larvae and whatever might actually be on those cloves. Now, typically, I would not typically peel cloves to plant. I let the papers fall off naturally. But if you see indications of mite damage, then you might want to check and see how severe it is throughout that clove. So we're going to walk through a couple of these. Now, if I have, this is an example of some, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see, maybe, I don't know. See that little brown spot? This is an example of some mite damage that I don't find to be too severe. If it's closer to the root plate or really covering the tip, then that piece goes into a ferment pile that's not going to be planted. But if it's just, little bits of damage on the side, then I'll basically just treat that with vodka or high proof alcohol. You can use hydrogen peroxide, you can use rubbing alcohol. I use whatever's laying around, and there's always a plastic jug somewhere. So don't know where they come from because none of us buy plastic jugs, but they show up from various projects. I probably bought it for gardening, to be honest. So those will soak for 15-20 minutes, kill off any of the mites and stuff. And these guys have been soaking for 15-ish, probably closer to 20, 25, I don't know. And so then what I'll do is I'll just drain off the vodka that's on this. Whoop. leaves a few cloves. And from there, what we'll do is put a different soak on them that is going to be a combination of plant foods. So basically what I'm using today, and I just kind of use whatever I have lying around in terms of active biology and food. So what I'm using today, this is a seaweed solution that got put in a smaller bottle. And then this is Brukashi. It's from my friends at SD Microbes. It is effective microorganisms and lactobacilli and all of these different things. Lactic acid bacteria cultures, all of these different things that are going to help create a really nice, healthy immune system on the outside of this garlic seed so that when it goes in the ground, it's ready to rock and roll and it has, kind of a defense squad around it. So all you do is it's about an ounce of each to a gallon of water. Kind of eyeball it. This is a half gallon of water they have sitting here in this jar. Yeah, that's on camera. So I'll give it a splash of that. And then I'll give it a splash of the Brukashi. I was playing with the idea of just using this because of the labs that are in it instead of using the vodka bath, but seeing as how bad the mites are on some of these seeds, I just don't want to take any chances. So you want to kill off as much as possible and then repopulate the seed with beneficials. Now, the old school of thought, I think, was to soak in the beneficial stuff overnight and then kill stuff off, but I don't really see the point of killing off the good stuff and the bad stuff. So kill off the bad stuff first, then soak in the foods, and then from there, get it in the good stuff. So I do not have a spoon nearby. I'll use my marker. So just give this a little swirl. This is probably why none of my markers work, right? It's because I'm dunking them in liquid all the time. And then this guy will get some of this food. And these will soak for at least 2 hours, but you can go longer. You can go up to 8 hours really without it starting to create any issues. Sometimes I'll do them overnight. Clearly I was not super prepared, so we're doing a 2-hour soak here. And then we're gonna get them in the ground right before sunset. And hopefully that gives them enough time to keep going. Now, if you're in a more southern latitude, like Texas or Southern California, or just anywhere along that line, you still have time to plant. I see friends that are in the Northeast, in like New York, that are still planting right now with different methods, obviously. But yeah, it's better to get garlic in the ground than not, even if it doesn't totally bulb up. Like, you still have something going. Now, when I'm talking about seed stock and when we're looking at this and all of the collections that I've gotten from various friends and picked up along the way, one of the things that I look at when I'm trying to decide what I'm planting for the following season is the bulb itself. So I'm looking for really good symmetry. Like, you see this one is pretty even all the way around. You want a really tight bulb wrapper where the papers are really tight on each clove so that any sort of like insect, pest, disease doesn't actually get into the papers and start creating issues like all of these ones that have mite damage. And you're looking basically for it to just be really symmetrical and really in good quality papers. Like, this is an example of one that I wouldn't consider to be high quality, and it probably should have been eaten at some point sooner in the season versus being put out there as potential seed stock, but it was really put out there as food stock more than seed stock. So, it's just the way these things work sometimes. But I'll pull out those outside wrappers, kind of give it a look, because what you're looking for is the garlic that you plant is going to basically replicate the best and worst qualities of the garlic that you start with. So whatever you put into the ground is going to be what you get out. So if you put in mite damaged bulbs, you're going to get out more mite damaged bulbs. If you put in, bulbs that don't have really tight wrapping or not a lot of symmetry, you're going to get more wonky bulbs out of the ground. Like, this is kind of just how these things work, right? It's plant genetics, but it's something to keep in mind while you're working on it. Now, what makes me stop and decide to peel all of the paper off of a bulb? I set examples aside, but I did not organize them. I got this other one that I saved as an example. So usually like a lot of times, and you can see in this jar that I won't pull the paper off. So I might pop a bulb apart, especially if it's like really nice looking, good symmetry, tight wrapping. I might pull some paper off of one or two, and then if I don't see any damage, what I'll do is just leave the paper on the rest and soak them from there, because I'm not as concerned about mites. Now if I start seeing cloves, or if I pull some paper off and I start seeing damage like this, I'm probably going to unwrap all of those bulbs and soak them all in vodka so that there's not mites hiding anywhere on the bulb, and everything, like all of the surfaces that are exposed, actually have contact with the high proof alcohol, which will kill those mites before they ever touch our soil. Again, you do not want to add them to your soil, just trust me on that. They are so hard to get rid of, almost impossible to be honest, and you really do have to find a new location to plant if they start coming up, because otherwise you're just going to get not good seed stock. So one of the things that I notice on the outside of a bulb that will make me inspect a little closer, and this is one I saved, see these kind of like rusty looking spots? There might be mite damage in here. It could also be garlic rust that was exposed to at some point, which is another thing that's hard to get rid of, and it's fungal. But again, the vodka will kill all of that, and peroxide, rubbing alcohol, just anything that is sort of antibacterial, antifungal, sterilizing in a way. So I'll pull these wrappers off, and I try to keep all of the wrappers too with anything that's damaged. Come here, Tater. With anything that's damaged, I'll try and keep all of those wrappers in their own container or off to the side so that I can either bag them or burn them later, because again, I don't want these pests getting out or disease getting out into the main field and planting areas. So you can see as I get deeper into this, there's more brown spots. So we're definitely going to peel down these cloves just to see what's going on. It could just be something that got on the outside of the bulb when it cured and it didn't, you know, cure as beautifully as we'd want it to, but there could also be a pest issue. So I'm just going to peel this down. Now it is promising, you know, when the paper is still tight, because that means that it's not going to, the chances of something being inside are a little bit lower. If I can even get this wrapper off on camera, right? I told you I spent all morning peeling what you see, and then there's a few more over here. And I have a ton more to peel, but I figured I might as well just get started. So on this guy, I'm seeing some early mite damage, but there's none of like the brown spots yet. So they did try to get in, and that's not going to be something, I don't think, visually that we can get, maybe. But it's not to the point where I'm just not going to soak it. It really is once you start to see it where there's like pretty extensive damage, maybe a little bit of mold happening on the insides of those spots. This is not just rot, like this is definitely indicative of mites existing in the soil where it was growing. And I don't want to add this to my soil because we don't have them here yet. And the goal is to not ever have them if possible. So, you know, it's the ounce of prevention situation. And so these guys look all right, actually. So there was just something on the outside of that wrapper. Again, we were looking for really tight wrappers to help prevent that. So sometimes you'll see a little damage on the outside. Just inspect it, like give it that extra second, guys, because garlic does live in your soil for what, 6, 7 months, 8 months, depending on where you live and what type you're growing. And so if you're going to dedicate real estate to a crop for that long of the season, and you're going to spend time amending and composting and mulching, like start with really good seed so that you can start with a really good seed next year, and so that you don't have, you know, as much pest concern. Now, one of the things that you might notice when you start looking for mites is that sometimes there's little bumps on the end of the bulb, like right there, and you'll see these little bumps across the top. Those are not mites. Those are roots that are just starting to come out. That's something that, you know, here's a better example, but that's something that I've had people go, oh my gosh, I have mites. I'm like, no, those are just roots, and sometimes they're early looking like that. But, you know, just keep an eye on it, and if it's kind of clear white-ish looking spotting, then it could be indicative of early mites. If you have a lot, again, of those like brown looking spots, then you probably got some serious mite issues and you might want to rethink what you're using for seed. Either, you know, keep those ones that are messed up for cooking and fermenting, or get rid of them because they're not good seed stock. Like, use your nicest, biggest bulbs for seed stock so that you can get really nice big bulbs for the following season when you go to harvest. So there's a better example of the roots. This is just like the little root plate that's starting to come out now. And you can see that, yeah, they're starting to grow. So these guys are definitely ready to go on the ground. Now, a few other things. If you have cloves that are opening up like this, where it's pulling the paper apart, you definitely want to check those. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's mites, but any place where the papers are not really tight is a chance for there to be just more mite pressure than usual. So you can see on this guy that he's starting to get, like, see this discoloration? So that could be mite pressure, yeah, and there's a little bit of brown discoloration there too on the bottom. So, you know, you have to make these calls yourself. A lot of times if it's very limited like that, then, and if I'm limited on stock, then I will still use this. Because I'm not super limited on stock, especially my hardneck varieties, then I'll probably put this in my ferment because I need a lot of garlic for that. Now, the difference between hardneck and softneck, if that was like, wait, there's hardneck? What are you talking about? The hardneck is the type of garlic that sends up escape. So in the springtime, it will send up the center flower stalk, kind of this wild curly Q looking thing, and you harvest that off and eat it because it's delicious. And then the garlic, when you go to harvest it, will have this kind of woody, fibrous stalk in the middle, like these. So hardneck's not great for braiding, but it's really nice if you like big garlic flavors, and especially if you live in a cold climate. But also, if you don't like peeling garlic, hardneck tends to be easier to peel. Now, the softnecks are your braiding varieties. I don't have a whole lot of softneck seeds that don't have rust pressure, so I might pull some from the forest, from the seed stock that I planted 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, somewhere around there. It was Christmas 2018. So they've been out there for 2 years. I want to see them now that they're perennializing without any additional inputs. I want to see what they're able to do this year. Last year they grew about 4 to 6 per cluster, and those bulbs are separate now and starting to send up their own green shoots, and everything's really clean. And I'm super excited to see how they bulb out from there, but I may swipe a little bit from that seed bank to put somewhere else so we have braiding garlic, because the softneck will last you longer throughout the year. It just stores better than the hardneck. Like, the hardneck tends to sprout faster. So again, that's why we're looking for the uniformity, the tight papers on the bulbs. All of these things are going to factor into not only how prolific your crop is, but also how long it can store and how long it'll be tasty for. So a few other things. One of the things that I'm doing here, planting garlic, because we're in heavy clay, even adding compost and stuff, there's areas that are still a little bit compacted. This isn't going in the field because the field has a lot of different plans this year, but there's different garden beds around the property, and since I have so much garlic that I'm planting, I am going to be using this drill spade. So this is, it's 1.5 inches, and basically it's for woodworking, but I'm using it in the soil, and I promised my dad that I would just clean it off really well after I'm done with it. But you just push it down into your garden bed, like almost up to the neck of it, and just like me, and drill a hole, and then drop your garlic in, and then with the dirt, with the soil, with the compost, with whatever healthy, delicious stuff that you're putting on top of it, and move on about it. And it's just, if you have a drill spade or a really big bit and a power drill, this goes way faster. You compact the soil a lot less than, you know, digging a hole with a bulb planter or shovel. So that's going to come in a lot of handy, planting as much garlic as I have here. And I'm trying to think what else there was. I would say try to get garlic for your area if possible. A lot of the garlics that I'm testing this year are ones that I got in the Northeast while I was there, and decided to not bail on these because garlic is not cheap. You know, good garlic is not cheap at least. And so there's just, you know, a handful of different varieties that I don't know if they're going to perform well in Texas. That's why we're moving some from the forest to various beds where they're going to get a little more light and water and compost, because I'm not messing with that space in the forest. I want to see what it can do on its own. I think that that's pretty much it. If you're trying to figure out what foods to add so that you can do your soak for an hour or two, definitely, so this was a seaweed solution, and you can get away with just like a seaweed solution kelp meal. I probably wouldn't go with like the fish fertilizer, or the fermented fish stuff. I think that's a little too high in nitrogen for garlic, and you don't want to really push the greens so much as encourage them to create strong roots. That's why I'm using the lactic acid cultures and effective microorganisms, is to kind of make those sorts of associations, mainly for the root plates, for these like plates that are starting, these guys, that are starting to just start branching out some little roots, some little feeler roots, so that once they get in the soil, those associations are already in place, and they just go and put all of the roots down and maybe a little bit of green up. But we don't want a lot of greens until next spring, because depending on where you're at, it's going to freeze. The greens will freeze and they'll be really sad, or you just won't get a lot of root growth. Again, this is a root crop, so we want root growth, not green growth. So maybe skip the fish fertilizer or go really light on it if that's all you have. But definitely encourage you to, you know, try different like mycorrhizal stuff, any of like your plant-based fertilizers. I don't know what else I would recommend in that space, because typically, yeah, everything I need is between these two, plus the sterilizing-ish soak that it gets. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to plant these guys about 3.5, 4 inches deep here, and then mulch them really well. Depending on what climate you're in, if you're way far north, there's definitely techniques I've seen lately where they're planting them about 1 inch deep and then really intensely mulching them and having great success with that, especially if you have a lot of standing water or your soil is heavy. So just kind of look through different methods for your region. Try to find seeds for your region and play with it a little. See where they do well. Garlic is a great thing to have in place for springtime, because if you plan it right and if you do it along your borders of your beds or you know, different places, it tends to be a little bit of a pest deterrent. So if you get it in place and then, you know, plant between it, you can really use it to your advantage. The other thing I want to mention before I sign off here is that most of this garlic, my plan right now, we have rose bushes out front of the house. So the plan is to plant them near the roses. There might be a few near the fruit trees. I'm going to kind of plug it in everywhere and see how it does, because garlic and roses do really well together. They're supposed to make each other taste better. I don't know beyond that, like if it's true or not, because I haven't really had the opportunity to do it before. But most of our fruit trees are in the rose family as far as the apples and stuff. So I'm just gonna kind of plug stuff around, play with it a little, see what happens, see what works well and what doesn't. But this is my like sort of bare bones method in terms of prepping garlic for planting, because enough of you guys asked. I will probably pretty deeply mulch these, and you do want to prep the soil with enough compost because they are heavy feeders. So beyond that, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, ding that bell. I am back and I am going to be making more content here very shortly, because there's a lot going on here in Texas. There's a lot of stuff to update you guys on in terms of projects that we kind of left a year ago, see what worked and what didn't, and you know what needs a little bit more finessing. And yeah, follow me on Instagram at FlavorKit for all of this sort of stuff and more, and lots of updates coming from this space that don't always make it to YouTube. And until next time, happy gardening.